Welcome to this channel, your space for calm and stillness at the end of the day. I'm Elwood, here to guide you through tonight's story. We create immersive sleep stories, crafted to help you unwind, release stress, and drift gently into deep sleep. Now, relax and enjoy tonight's story. If our stories bring you peace, please show your support by liking and subscribing. A Winter's Night Tale for Restful Dreams. In the middle of the snowfields, where the wind whispered all day and the sky glowed like cold glass, lived a boy named Theo. Theo was 10 years old, had far too many ideas in his head, and never, ever wore matching socks. He lived in a cozy igloo with his older sister Ria, who made excellent hot cocoa and tried to keep Theo's tools from ending up in the soup pot. Outside their igloo stood a crooked wooden sign that read, "Welcome to the coldest workshop in the north," with a hand-drawn penguin giving a thumbs up. Every day, Theo built something. A spoon that stirred itself. A scarf that beeped when you sneezed. Once, he even made snowshoes for their cat, who absolutely refused to use them. But what he wanted more than anything was to attend the Great Winter Inventors Market, held once a year in Frost Hollow, a village miles away where clever minds from all over came to show off their strangest, wildest creations. There was just one problem. You had to be 12. And Theo was 10 3/4, but still 10. That night after dinner, he sighed and stared up at the icy ceiling of the igloo. "I wish they'd let me come. Just once," he said. Ria looked up from her book. "Maybe next year. I'll be ancient by then," he moaned, flopping dramatically onto the sleeping mat. She laughed. "Then send a snow telegram to the market. Tell them your cat invented something and wants to enter." Theo sat up. That wasn't a bad idea. He rushed outside, grabbed his makeshift snow telegram machine. A box with a bell, a crank, and a puff of cinnamon-scented steam, and spoke clearly into the funnel. "To the Inventors Market. My name is Theo. I'm 10, and I make things that almost work." He cranked the lever twice. A small puff of warm air floated into the sky, carrying his message on the wind. Then he went to bed, just for fun, just to imagine. He didn't expect an answer, but answers don't always come the way we expect. The next morning, the snow outside the igloo was soft and untouched, except for one long trail of tiny footprints. Not human footprints, penguin footprints. Theo rubbed his eyes and pressed his nose to the igloo's round window. Standing outside was a small penguin wearing a red messenger hat and a satchel covered in stamps. He was tapping one flipper on the icy ground, waiting. Ria opened the door. "Delivery for a Mr. Theo?" the penguin asked, glancing at a card. "That's me," Theo said, running to the door with his boots half on. The penguin handed him a square envelope made of thick, glittering ice paper. It shimmered in the morning light. The front read, "Special invitation, one extraordinary guest." From the Council of Winter Tinkerers. Theo blinked. "Is this real?" The penguin nodded, pulled a cookie from his satchel, and waddled off down the trail without another word. Inside, the envelope was a golden ticket and a note. "We heard your message. Courage makes the best inventions. We'll see you at the market." Theo turned to Ria, his hands shaking. they actually want me to come." Rhea smiled. "Then I guess we better pack." That evening, Theo and Rhea filled a small sled with essentials. One pair of warm mittens, finally matching. 2 jars of extra marshmallows, and a blanket shaped like a dragon. For luck, Theo brought his snow telegram machine, just in case. They tied it all down with twine and laughter, waved goodbye to their igloo, and set off toward Frost Hollow, the snow crunching softly under their boots. Above them, the stars watched silently. Theo couldn't stop smiling, not just because he was going to the market, but because someone had believed in him, and sometimes that's all it takes to make an idea fly. The road to Frost Hollow wound through forests of glassy trees and fields, so quiet even the snowflakes seemed to tiptoe. Theo held tight to the front of the sled, eyes wide. Rhea pulled them steadily, humming a soft tune, their breath painting clouds into the winter air. As they turned the last bend in the path, Theo gasped. Frost Hollow was nothing like he imagined. The village sat nestled in a bowl of mountains, and every rooftop twinkled with soft golden light. Wooden bridges stretched over frozen streams, connecting tall towers that leaned slightly, as if whispering secrets to each other. Wind chimes made of crystal hung from every awning, ringing gently in the breeze. And in the center of the village stood a giant mechanical tree, its limbs slowly rotating, each one glowing faintly with warm blue light. A carved sign greeted them. "Welcome to Frost Hollow, where curiosity sleeps lightly." They followed a line of lanterns, not the floating kind, towards the central square. Dozens of children bustled around, unpacking contraptions of all shapes and sizes, spinning teapots, whispering notebooks, a hat that gave compliments. Theo's heart pounded. Everyone was older, taller, louder. Rhea knelt beside him. "You okay?" He nodded, a little too fast. "Yeah, totally. It's just a lot." Before she could reply, a voice called out, "Name, please." They turned to see a small man with wild white eyebrows and a clipboard the size of a sled. Theo stepped forward. "Theo, from the coldest workshop in the north." The man squinted. Then suddenly he smiled. "Ah, the message boy! Follow me, follow me! We've got a spot for you right next to the whistling turnip girl." "The what?" But the man had already vanished into the crowd. Theo gripped the snow telegram machine under his arm. He was really here, and tomorrow he'd have to show them something only he could build. That night, the village was quiet. Theo and Rhea slept in a round wooden guest hut with frosty windows and a fireplace that purred like a cat. The fire was made from glowing ice blocks that didn't melt, just shimmered, but Theo couldn't sleep. He lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling, his hands clasped behind his head. Outside, he could hear the soft whir of inventions being polished, adjusted, tuned. He sat up, pulled on his boots, and stepped outside. The sky above Frost Hollow was a deep navy blue sprinkled with stars. The snow crunched gently under his feet as he wandered through the rows of covered carts and tents, each one hiding someone's big idea. He passed a booth with blinking umbrellas, another with talking maps, and one that smelled strongly of pickles and smoke. Theo suddenly felt small, really small. His snow telegram machine, a box of parts that squeaked and hissed and never did the same thing twice, felt silly. "Courage makes the best inventions," he whispered, remembering the note. But courage was easy when no one was watching. He sat down on a bench near the frozen fountain in the center of the square, the telegram box beside him. Just then, a soft voice broke the silence. "Can I sit here?" Theo turned to see a girl about his age, wearing a vest covered in buttons and patches. One of them read, "Inventor in Progress." "Sure," he said. She sat beside him and pulled out a notebook filled with drawings. "Messy, wild, brilliant. What's your invention?" she asked. Theo hesitated. Then he shrugged. "A snow telegram machine. Kinda works. Mostly doesn't." The girl grinned. "Perfect. I made a soup stirrer that flings noodles at people. Want to see?" Theo laughed. For the first time that day, the nerves in his chest loosened a little. "I'm Theo." "I'm June." They sat there a while, trading stories and ideas, the snow falling silently around them. And when Theo finally crawled back into bed, he wasn't worried anymore. Because tomorrow wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up. Theo awoke to the smell of something sweet. Outside, the village square buzzed with excitement. Tents had blossomed into booths overnight, each one decorated with snowflakes, blinking lights or spinning signs. Laughter echoed from every corner. The winter invention market had begun. Theo pulled on his scarf and boots, then gently set the snow telegram machine onto the small wooden table assigned to him. It sputtered a little, coughed once, then blinked its blue light. "Good morning to you too," Theo whispered. Ria appeared with a thermos of peppermint cocoa and a small, proud smile. "You've got this," she said, and gave his shoulder a squeeze. He nodded, but his heart thudded like a drum inside his chest. Inventors from all over were unveiling their creations. A broom that danced when it swept, snowshoes that hummed lullabies, and a teacup that giggled when filled. Then came June. She wheeled out her noodle stirrer, and this time it didn't fling a single noodle. Instead, it gently stirred a pot of soup while singing in perfect harmony with a nearby kettle. The crowd loved it. Theo glanced at his own machine. It didn't sing, it didn't glow, it didn't even always work. He flipped the switch. The machine whirred, then clicked, then nothing. He bit his lip. And that's when June walked up. "I love it," she said. Theo blinked. "You haven't seen it do anything." "I don't have to. I can tell it was made by someone who meant every wire, every button." Theo smiled, just a little. "You're weird." June grinned. "Thanks." Then she reached into her vest pocket and pulled out something small and round. A golden badge shaped like a snowflake. "They give these out to inventors who spark joy," she said. "I got one last year. But this year, I think it's yours." Theo shook his head. "But I didn't. You showed up. You built something no one else could. You inspired me." She pinned the badge to his coat and walked off before he could say a word. The machine blinked again, once, twice, then buzzed softly and printed a tiny message. Sometimes the best inventions aren't machines, they're moments. Theo stared at the note, then he laughed, really laughed. The snow telegram machine clicked again. Theo looked down. Another strip of paper slid out, slower this time. The message read, "You're closer than you think." He frowned. He hadn't typed anything. He checked the wires, the dial, even the message chamber. Everything looked right, but the machine hummed with a rhythm he didn't recognize, like it was thinking on its own. Theo tapped the side gently. "You okay?" It blinked once, then again. He glanced around the market. Everyone was busy showing, testing, laughing. June had gathered a crowd around her now singing kettle, which had started dancing ever so slightly with its ladle. Theo picked up the message again. "You're closer than you think." Closer to what? He tucked it into his coat and flipped the machine's switch again. Nothing happened. Then, just as he turned to walk away, it buzzed loudly. A new paper curled out, but this time it wasn't typed in his handwriting. The letters were older, curved, faintly glowing. It said, "To the boy who listens, look behind the painting in the old library." Theo blinked. What painting? He looked up. To his left was the frost-hollow library, an arched, domed structure with snow-dusted glass and two brass owl statues standing on either side of the entrance. "Ria's going to say, 'I'm wandering off again,'" he mumbled to himself. But curiosity had already won. He slipped the telegram into his pocket and crossed the square toward the library. The brass owl on the left blinked, just once. Theo froze, then it blinked again. He smiled nervously. Right, of course, magic owls. The library's door creaked open as Theo stepped inside. It was warmer than he expected, not just in temperature, but in feeling. The walls were curved like the inside of a snow globe, lined with shelves of leather-bound books and glowing icicle chandeliers that cast soft reflections onto the stone floor. It didn't smell like dust or paper. It smelled like memory. Theo walked past a globe that spun slowly on its own, and a clock with no hands. Every step felt heavier, not in weight, but in wonder. And then he saw it. At the far end of the room hung a single painting. It was large, framed in frosted wood, and showed a wintry landscape. With a familiar shape in the corner, it was a boy, standing beside a snow telegram machine. Theo's heart skipped. He approached the painting. The boy's coat looked just like his. The same scarf, the same goggles. But the boy in the painting wasn't alone. Beside him stood a girl, her hand resting gently on the machine. Her face was turned slightly, but he could just make out a glint of something round on her vest. "A snowflake badge. June," Theo whispered. He stepped closer and felt behind the frame. Cold wood, smooth, and then a click. The painting tilted slightly forward, and behind it was a hidden panel with a small carved handle. He pulled it. A drawer slid out. Inside was a faded notebook bound in ribbon. On the cover, one word, possibilities. Theo opened it. The pages were filled with sketches, diagrams, half-finished thoughts, and at the very end, a message written in looping script. To the next dreamer, if you found this, then you believed in more than buttons and wires. You believed in ideas and in people. Underneath was a single line in smaller print, invention. lives not in things, but in what they bring out in others. Theo closed the book slowly, as if afraid it might vanish, and when he looked up again, the boy in the painting was smiling. Theo stood in silence, the notebook still in his hands. The air in the library felt different now, still calm, still quiet, but full of something unspoken, as if the walls were listening. He gently slid the drawer closed and placed the painting back into position. The boy and the girl stared ahead, frozen in time, partners in invention, or maybe in belief. Back outside, the sun had begun to dip low behind the mountains, casting the entire market in soft golden light. Ria spotted him first. "There you are," she said, rushing over. June's noodle machine won the crowd's choice award. It sang Ode to Soup. I cried a little. Theo smiled faintly. Sounds about right. Ria paused, squinting at him. "What's in your hand?" He hesitated, then handed her the notebook. She flipped through it silently, then looked up. I found it behind the painting in the library," Theo said. I think it belonged to someone like us. Someone who believed in building things not just to work, but to mean something." Ria nodded slowly. Then it found the right hands. They stood there for a moment as snow began to fall, light, lazy flakes drifting down like feathers from the clouds. June came running over, holding 2 mugs of warm cider. "You vanished," she said to Theo. "I found a story," he replied, "and maybe something more." She handed him a mug, then glanced down at the snow telegram machine on the table beside them. It blinked, then printed one more message. Sometimes the message is the one you didn't know you needed to hear. They all looked at it and laughed quietly, their breath curling into the cold air like ribbon. "I guess it works after all," Theo said. "No," June replied. "You work. It's just your messenger." As evening deepened, the last lanterns of the market were lit, casting soft circles of light across the snow. Music drifted from the stage. Gentle, wordless harmonies played on flutes carved from ice, and drums stretched with fabric so thin it trembled at every touch. The entire square felt wrapped in magic. Theo, Ria, and June sat near the back of the crowd, their mugs refilled, cheeks rosy from laughter and winter air. Theo looked down at the machine beside him. It buzzed once and printed nothing. But he smiled. Anyway, he turned to June. "You know, I never thought a story like this would be mine." June leaned back against the bench. "That's how the best ones start." Ria nodded. Unfinished, unexpected. Just then, the stage lights dimmed and a quiet hush spread over the crowd. From behind the curtain, a soft orange glow appeared. At first, Theo thought it was a spotlight, but no, it was too warm, too gentle. It pulsed like a heartbeat, and then from the side of the stage, a figure stepped forward holding something familiar. A snow telegram machine, but this one was larger, older, made of crystal and carved ice, humming with energy. Theo's breath caught. The figure spoke. Once, long ago, a boy believed his machine could send more than messages. He believed it could reach the heart of another. The machine lit up, and slowly, gently, small strips of glowing paper began to rise into the sky, lifting on invisible air like snowflakes floating upward. Each one carried a word: hope, curiosity, kindness, imagination. Together, Theo's eyes stung a little. June leaned close. Looks like your idea wasn't so small after all. The glowing words hovered above the crowd, and for a moment, no one spoke because everyone understood. It wasn't about the machine, it was about what it carried and who it reached. Later that night, long after the music had faded and the crowd had wandered home through the frost-lined streets, Theo sat alone outside the igloo workshop. The air was quiet, not with emptiness, but with a kind of peace, the kind that comes after something real has happened. The snow telegram machine sat beside him, silent now. He pulled the old notebook from his coat and ran his fingers across the cover. Possibilities. He didn't need to write anything more in it. Not tonight. Inside the igloo, Rhea had already curled up beside the small fire pit, tinkering, with a teacup that whistled when the tea was ready. June was asleep in her hammock, one hand resting gently over a pouch of buttons, springs, and notes from the festival. Theo smiled. He looked up at the stars, brilliant, scattered across the sky like someone had shaken a jar of glitter too hard. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel the need to ask them anything. He already had his answer. Not from the sky, not from the machine, but from the people who had sat beside him, who had believed with him. He stood, brushing snow from his coat, and turned toward the warm glow of the igloo. And just before stepping inside, he whispered to the cold, to the night, to the stars, "Thank you." Then, with one last glance at the sky, he ducked beneath the rounded arch and let the snow fall quietly behind him.